I want to thank the people who set up, and I want to thank Tim Brown particularly, because when we were taking it down, he was there till the end, and he made it look the way it should look before we left. I want to thank all of you who came last night, and I want to thank the people from Piedmont, Piedmont. All right, and I just want to share something. Our goal was to get $5,000. We would have called it a success if we got $5,000. Who would guess on what we really got?
I know.
If you don't know, give me a guess.
8,000.
10,000?
Well, $1 million.
Well, Jim was the closest. The auction total, $9,597. Well, that's the good news. That creates a mark for next year, doesn't it? All right. I drop this final stone in the water for the joys and the concerns that are in your hearts but haven't been expressed verbally. Recording can start. Welcome to everyone here in person today and to everyone who's visiting our service with the help of modern technology. The UU Fellowship of Lake Norman is an open and inclusive congregation. Our members walk diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united by our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, and by the responsibility to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Harvey. I've been a member since 2017. Pat's reflection today will be treasure found in Albuquerque. And I'm going to let Pat give us, no, I'm going to say a few more words, I think. I'm going to say a few more words. Now, Pat is usually very shy and retiring. So we want to thank him for coming out of his shell to give us the speech today. Most of you know that he spent several days in Albuquerque with almost all of his children, all his grandchildren, and one ex-wife. Only one. Yes. It was a trip of a lifetime. He also found Richard, whose father survived the Holocaust, and Harrison Graves, a retired ER doctor who was considering UUism. What might we learn from chance encounters with folks on the grounds of a national monument and a plane ride home? What might we learn from survivors of the Holocaust and people who say, I don't go to church, but if I did go, I would go to yours. Pat, will you do us the honors with the opening words?
Yes. I have some fabulous opening words, but before I share them, I need to celebrate another auspicious day. Not only is this the day after our fabulous auction, I know I can do this. This is not rocket surgery. Today is our birthday.
That's right.
According to vast research that I have done, that has resulted in most people saying, I don't know. UUA certified this congregation 12 years ago, and we have developed something of a consensus that June 12th is our birthday. Mike is now going to lead us in happy birthday to us, and when we get to the name part, we're just going to say UU later on. You ready? Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to you later on. Happy birthday to us. Everybody make a wish. And I'm going to present this orange cranberry muffin to Jim Price, who is our president and representative of all of you. But Jim, I'm going to encourage you to share little bits with Pat and Doug Wall and Harvey. And if Lynn Henderson were here, I would encourage that. But definitely Linda and her bartenders, Kyle, because we had such a party last night. And I really want to thank so many of you for your kindness to Gabriel. It's something of a local myth that Gabriel does not exist, but many of you found out last night that she does exist, and she was thrilled with the reception you gave her. Everybody was so nice to her and so engaging, and she went home to say, I really felt energized by the experience. She also said, did you notice that your sermon topics raised a lot more money than your books? And I said, yes, I did notice that. She said, do you think that's because people are more interested in what they think than what you think?
Yeah.
The dog had a wonderful night. We walked her constantly, but not nearly enough to satisfy some folks, and that's understandable. But she's a good dog, and she's still alive this morning. Our opening words come from English writer G.K. Chesterton. The sane man knows he has a touch of the beast, a touch of the devil, a touch of the saint, a touch of the citizen. Nay, the really sane man knows he has a touch of the madman. But the materialist world is quite simple and solid, just as the madman is quite sure he is sane. Do we now have a story called?
Well, I don't know. I have to look at my. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. That's right. It says so right here. Okay. Say with me, this flaming chalice to illuminate the world we see. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. Now we're going to have a story for Reverend.
All right. Who needs to hear a story? Do you want to hear a story? You want to hear a story? Sure. He says no. Sure. I tell you, if you will listen to a story, you get out. Okay. All right. Ellery's going to come listen to a story. That's okay. That's okay, Ellery. Ellery, he'll get the message when you go out. He'll figure out that you're his escape hatch. Okay. All right. Just say for always. Just say for always. Okay. On the back of the order of service today is an acknowledgement that we stand on the traditional lands of the first peoples of North Carolina, including the Catawba, the Saponi Nation, the Sugaree, and the Waxhaw. Now, Ellery, what is that talking about? I know you checked that out. I saw you check that out. You can't fool me. I know you checked that out. Jim, what's that talking about?
Indigenous people, Indians.
Yeah, they're sometimes called Indians. In fact, Columbus called them Indians because he thought he'd found India. Knucklehead that he was. So that's how they got the nickname Indians. They really prefer First Peoples or Native people. And they used to live around here. They used to live around these woods.
They don't live here anymore. You know how that happened? Lots of bad people did bad things to them and ran them off. But we, as a UU congregation, are acknowledging, we're remembering them. We're remembering the bad things that happened, and hopefully they're not going to happen again. And we now have these words framed on our piano, and this is going to be part of our stuff that we put out on Sunday morning, our service elements. The rest of the acknowledgement reads, we recognize the Native communities in our region today and extend our deepest gratitude to those who have stewarded this land and offer our respect to the elders, past, present, and future. You can go to your classes now. And Jim got up.
Ours looks bad, looks like nobody's gonna go to
I know,
class.
does anybody want to go hang out with me? Ellie, going?
Like a minute. So I'll try to fix it for Terry and I break it home.
Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Al, you stay, you may stay.
I think he feels like
And now, please be seated as Mike invites us with music into a place of worship and contemplation.
I played this song with Eddie just before. I invited him up to do it with us. It's an old Rolling Stones song. It was first recorded by Marion Faithfull. Do you remember? It is the evening of the day. I sit and watch the children play. Smiling faces I can see, but not for me. I sit and watch as tears go by. My riches can't buy everything. I long to hear the children sing. All I hear is the sound of rain falling on the ground. I sit and watch as tears go by. It is the evening of the day. I sit and watch the children play, doing things we think when I think of you. I sit and watch as tears go by.
Reverend Pat.
Y'all, let's just take a deep breath. I told Doug last night, I've been involved in many church auctions. I even saw a mannequin that looked like Elvis Presley auctioned one night. And the guy who bought it said, sell it again. And the guy who bought it the second time said, sell it again. And somehow it ended up in the back seat of my car. But seriously, Doug, Pat, and convey this to the rest of your family. Just awesome job. Awesome job. And Harvey, where did Harvey go? Harvey, you need to make sure you get at least a smidgen of that muffin. Because it was you who 3 months ago said, we need to have a party. We need to have a fundraiser. We need to have an auction. And then the chips started to fall. And that kind of event, y'all, reminds us of who we are and where we're going and what we want to do together. It really does. Travel comes highly recommended. Mark Twain said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on those accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime. It's obvious, is it not? And yet I am a card-carrying homebody. I love to stay home. I love what Wendell Berry said. He said, I fly all over the world telling people to stay home. Yet my trip to Albuquerque taught me again that travel really can provide extraordinary experiences. I will not dwell on seeing and being with my children and grandchildren, and yes, one ex-wife. All of you know that can make the heart sing and sometimes worry the mind. No need to tarry there. First, I want to tell you about visiting the Rinconada Canyon, home of the Peregriph National Monument, where ancient stone carvings evoke a long-lost past and staggering landscapes lift the heart. But I ain't going to tell you about staggering landscapes or ancient carvings. I'm going to tell you about meeting Richard from France. He and his wife, Nicole, have visited the U.S. 7 times and have seen more of the country than her relatives who migrated after the war and live here full time. When I think of France, I think of the tiny, isolated mountain village of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon, where 3,000 Jews fleeing imprisonment and murder by the Nazis were hidden for the duration of the war. Malcolm Gladwell tells this remarkable story in his book, David and Goliath. At the beginning of the war, the little elementary school in this town had 8 students. But as the Jews came to hide in barns, basements, and woods around the village, the student body grew from 8 to 300. The Jews became part of the community's life. So much so that when the SS would come to the village to look for Jews, the local police would sound the alarm and the Jews would hide. Finally, an SS colonel got wind of what was going on, and he came to the little town and ordered the local populace to gather in the soccer stadium. And he strutted into that soccer stadium, and he was going to tell those people what would happen to them for hiding Jews. But it didn't happen. A teenage boy walked up to him, stood a few inches from his face, and said, "We have Jews, and you can't have them." The colonel turned on his heels, got in his car, and drove away. The SS never came back to that village. When I told Richard this story, he told me that his father had survived the Holocaust and that he later married his mother, who gave birth to Richard and 2 more sons. How remarkable. How wonderful. The excitement is too juicy. I feel wild glee at such a fact. There stood Richard, 77 years after the end of the war, 77 years after his father had walked out of Auschwitz and walked home. Having lost every other member of his family, there stood Richard, and somewhere in the world are his two brothers, and goodness knows how many grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren. Take that, you dark and shameless Nazis. You didn't get Richard's father, and he blessed the world with more children. You not only lost the war, you lost your shot at Richard's father. He escaped your blood-stained hands. There is no diminishing the horrors of the Holocaust or the genocides that have followed. Human rights attorneys today report that they have 11,000 ongoing investigations of Russian war crimes in Ukraine. And they believe it is only the tip of the iceberg. But those numbers hardly approach the scale of the Holocaust. Meeting Richard was such a joy, such a graphic illustration of what Gladwell wrote about in his book. He said it was not the privileged and the fortunate who took in Jews in France. It was the marginal and damaged, which should remind us that there are real limits to what evil and misfortune can accomplish. Real limits to what evil and misfortune can accomplish. If you take away the gift of reading, I'm still quoting Gladwell here. If you take away the gift of reading, you create the gift of listening. If you bomb a city, you leave behind death and destruction, but you create a community of remote misses. If you take away a mother and a father, you cause suffering and despair, but 1 in 10 out of that despair rises an indomitable spirit. You see the giant and the shepherd, Goliath and David, in the valley of Elah, and your eye is drawn to the man with the sword and shield and glittering armor. But so much of what is beautiful and valuable in the world comes from the shepherd, who has more strength and purpose than we can ever imagine. We here on the banks of Lake Norman may be small in number, and we certainly were not last night. But we are big in strength and purpose, and we know where we are headed. We will continue to feed at Feed NC. We will continue to reach out to dogs on chains and their owners. We will write postcards to recently disenfranchised voters and pick up litter on the side of the road. Jim Arnold mentioned it just last night. We're going to be picking up litter on the side of the road. We will welcome visitors, and some will join us in gathering here on Sunday afternoons. And that brings us to Harrison Graves. Dr. Graves is a retired ER doc who now lives in Fleetwood, North Carolina, a community near Boone. I should say he is semi-retired as he continues an alternative medicine practice through a website you can find easily through searching for Harrison Graves. I mention him in the spirit of evangelism. He might become a UU someday. I'll say more about that in a moment. He is our kind of guy, a recovering Baptist. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Who is more interested now in spirit than religion. A colleague of mine was once asked, what's the difference between spirit and religion? He said, spirit is what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's what gives you the strength to get through the day, to love life, to enjoy yourself, your friends, your family. He said, religion is committee meetings and buildings. Now, that may be a slight oversimplification, but it makes sense to me. Dr. Graves has an easy laugh and manner and a healthy respect for that which lies just beyond our understanding. He was kind and generous and great company as the two of us flew at 35,000 feet between Denver and Charlotte. Now that we come to the moment where we talk about evangelism. I know this makes some of you uncomfortable. Graves told me that he knows where the UU church is in Boone. And then he used that magical phrase that you just heard Harvey quote a few minutes ago. I don't go to church, but if I did, yours is the one I'd go to. Let's face it, folks. If everybody who felt that way showed up here one Sunday afternoon, we'd have to take the service over to the parking lot. They may not be the majority, but the folks who do the surveys for the Pew Charitable Trust say 40% of Americans now claim no religious beliefs, including those who even reject atheism and agnosticism. They're called the nuns. None of the above. Most of those people would be totally comfortable in a UU congregation. It's not that we believe in nothing. We do believe in justice and kindness and friendship and music and a host of other things. Speaking of music, you two are fabulous. Fabulous. We just don't hold to any one religion as being better than another. And we don't believe there's anything wrong with no religion at all. We like the humanist t-shirt that reads, I believe in good. There you go. In the name of Harrison Graves, I ask you to keep the conversation going with your friends. Thanks for bringing some friends last night to the auction. Pat and Doug, thanks last night for bringing friends to the auction. That was a great time with food and libation. But also consider inviting them here on some Sunday afternoon. Here is where we learn about the truth and strength that brings us together. Here is where we sing together and make eye contact and tell stories and laugh and care for each other. This hour on Sunday afternoons is the beginning of the journey for many people who think they're the only ones. You know, and I know they are not the only ones. We found each other. How did you feel when you first found this crowd? Sometimes I say the right thing and it sounds wrong to me. It felt pretty good, didn't it? It felt pretty good to find this fellowship. So talk to your friends and relatives. Tell them to come on in. The water's fine. Here's a poem by Jack Gilbert. Sorrow, it's called A Brief for the Defense. Sorrow everywhere. Slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they are starving someplace else with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy our lives because that's what God wants. Otherwise, the mornings before summer dawn would not be made so fine. The Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they have known and the awfulness in their future. Smiling and laughing while somebody in the village is very sick. There is laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of the world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that the end had magnitude. We must admit there will be music despite everything. We stand at the prow again of a small ship anchored late at night in the tiny port, looking over to the sleeping island. The waterfront is 3 shattered cafes and 1 naked light burning. To hear the faint sound of oars in the silence as a rowboat comes slowly out and then goes back is truly worth all the years of sorrow that are to come. If the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman is nothing else, it is a buffer against the years of sorrow that are to come. I'm so grateful to Jack Gilbert for writing this poem. I'm going to try to find him online so I can send him a thank you note. How extraordinary, how amazing. We here at this UU Fellowship, as we begin our 13th year as a congregation, we don't need something so tiny as the faint sound of oars in the silence to make our lives are truly worth all the years of sorrow that are to come. We have this beautiful room here in the Davidson Friends Meeting House. We have music and rich traditional readings from many world religions, including atheism and agnosticism. It's all right in the back of our hymn books. We have poetry and prose to lift our hearts and inspire our actions. But most importantly, we have each other. Red Skelton used to close every one of his broadcasts with, all we really have in this whole world is each other. That's us. We do not trust in any one name. We do not trust in any one tradition, any one kind of symbol or book or gathering. But somehow, through thick and thin, we have come to trust each other, to bet a measure of our devotion on the good that comes of being together, working together. And last night, partying hardy together. So let's give it 12 more years and see how we feel about it then.
Far from the forces I run, frightened of what I'll come. Soon as you get down to me, they seal your fate to me. Oh, to me. Show me the true rose of love, painted with clear eyes to see. Oh, spare me the sermons, toss me a good line rope, just as you step from me, reaching the ball to your feet, turning you. Oh, there's only one way to go. Give me the clear eyes to see. Oh, take it all away from me. I don't want to see. Yesterday, I was just a child. Break free, the free world. Now there's a hole in my roof, but I've seen a hole through the truth. Facing your love as my lost. I nailed my heart to the cross. Clearly, oh, show me the true rose of love. Painted clear eyes to see. Clearly, oh, there's only one way to go. Give me the clear eyes to see. Oh,
Thank you, Pat, Reverend Pat, for your wonderful sermon. And thank you, Eddie and Mike, for the music. It all contributed to this feel-good moment we have as a group at this point in time. Happy birthday, Mazel Tov. This fellowship is important to all of us. The contributions we make today allow us to sustain and grow our congregation and reach out to our community, both nearby and in the larger world. Your giving affirms our commitment to each other and to the community. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. May they encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. Before I read the announcements at the back of the order of service, I know Pat and Doug have some things they have to say about wrapping up the event. So I'd like to ask them to stand or come forward or whatever they want to do.
Come around. Come around now.
Put on a hat.
Yeah, we got a couple of housekeeping things to clean up here. And it's, again, most special thanks to the donors and bidders and all the volunteers from last night. But a special thanks to my wife. Without her, we wouldn't have had an auction. She is the auction. You know, that's right. I get involved about 2 weeks for it. All the emails you sent, I never see them. She gets it all there, and she just tells me what to do, and I do it. You know, that's the way you do it. But we have a few things here. We have, if you bid last night for the blueberry picking, and that's the blueberry trees. If you didn't pick up last night, we have the directions on here for you. This was donated, by Carl and Myrna Hess. They came last night to support the UU Fellowship here, and their 2 items raised $400. That's nice, real nice, real nice. So we have that here, and for all the donors, we have a list of the items you bought out that you brought here, and you can see who purchased your item. And for the bidders, we have invoices here for you. And Agnes is here. She has a square that thing just whips. So if you want to pay cash, check, or credit card, she has that. But we also have that listed out there for all the bidders. You can pick up and see what you have there. For the people that bought the bug repellent, the Southern praline sauce, and the bogle wine, we have those out here that weren't picked up. And also who bought the concert tickets for St. Albans, that's out here. So we'll see you after the service.
I think you can all read these. Just remember, we have 2 more services left before the summer break. Our closing song today is "We Shall Overcome." It is 169 in your songbook. Please stand as you're willing and able.
shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Thank you, Steve. We have two sources of closing words today. One comes from 2 weeks ago where I quoted Gandhi, and I just loved it so much I couldn't let it go. If you don't find God in the next person you meet, it's a waste of time to look further. But the other closing words are from Howard Zinn, and I want to thank Tracy Grimm for sending these to me. Howard Zinn wrote, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. If we do not act in however small a way, if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is in itself a marvelous victory."
We're going to extinguish the chalice. In your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again. We're having a great time this week.
Yeah, we did.